The silence was deafening until an avalanche overhead startled me out of an emotionally repressed stupor. I barely bothered looking up. The sun was out and the mountains had been crumbling around us all day, but the valley we were in was relatively safe. The slide paths that had reached down to where we were made for better walking than the near infinite baby head boulders that threatened to break our ankles. I hated that place and loathed every step, but moving forward was our only way out. We were a day shy of finishing our expedition, and there was no going back the way we had come. The plan for the trip had been simple enough. We'd cross the main divide of the Southern Alps using every sport at our disposal: climbing, ski mountaineering, and packrafting.
The more activities I combine into one trip, the more enjoyable. Packrafting, skiing, they're all fun to go out and do, but when you take everything and you put them all together, it's like a symphony.
It looked like a perfect combination of a few disciplines and using them together.
The idea was we were going to move from this alpine environment into a glacier-fed lake and then follow this lake out from the mountain.
It would be as superfluous as any adventure, but combining disciplines promised to provide expanded perspectives of New Zealand and maybe ourselves.
So we started at the Fox, hiking up onto the Fox Glacier. That day we had the plan to hit the Chancellor Hut, but within the first 5 hours we acknowledged we likely weren't going to meet that timeline.
Once we pass these boulders here, we're entering Suicide Alley, so we should just minimize our amount of time in that area.
Getting off the Fox Glacier onto the Moraine looked like it was going to be more challenging than we expected. It was a wake-up call to New Zealand routes. They don't tame them for the user. The user brings themselves up to the mountains. It was definitely an education into what I was going to be experiencing in New Zealand.
Well, it is 10 p.m. We were supposed to be at a hut, but route finding has been pretty slow going in the dark. So we found a spot on the side of the hill. I'm going to be sleeping in the grass on a backpack because I didn't bring a sleeping pad.
Once we reached the Chancellor Hut, there was, I guess, a bit of trepidation with myself and Jake that we were going to encounter more problems that need to be solved that would create more delays and that would lead us to having to bivvy out on the glacier without reaching the Pioneer Hut.
An additional 7 hours to the Pioneer Hut.
There's no way. Like, that's if we know the route, and I don't know.
God, I would love to go up, but I do feel like there's a helicopter. Be like $130 each, $33.
We're looking to get a bump from Chancellor Hut to Pioneer today. Any possibilities there?
Possibly 2 o'clock. I can put you on speed. You can radio back at 1:30 to confirm or not. Stand by, Chancellor Hut.
So that experience of just getting picked up at the Chancellor Hut and then flying up, seeing the glacier we would have traversed across, and seeing the tracks of our partner Ryan that was going to join us, seeing the Pioneer Hut and then getting dropped off. It was the juxtaposition of where we come from and then feeling safe. And at that point I felt like the worst was behind us. We'd kind of got up out of the jungle.
Shortly after arriving at Pioneer Hut, we went to go check out Douglas Peak. Its steep south face contained the ice line we wanted to climb.
It was an environment that was a lot bigger and a lot more committing than I imagined it would be.
I don't know if I'm that alpine.
I don't think I had a proper understanding of just how large and how jagged and imposing the mountains were in the Southern Alps.
A storm blew in that night, leaving us hut-bound for the next day.
Most of today is like 60, 50% chance of snow, 10, 20,
The decision that the team made after the storm event that we experienced at the Pioneer Hut was that we weren't going to climb the ice line on Mount Douglas once we were able to get over and have a look at it and see how much extra snow had been loaded onto the route and filling in the gully. There was definitely a feeling that that snow was going to change conditions and also just create questions about stability on slopes. It just didn't seem it was safe, and with the forecast of weather changing on the horizon, we also just didn't have the time to wait for it to come back into shape. So at that point we collectively made the decision that we'd move on from the ice line and continue our traverse.
I struggled a lot with the skiing. I definitely fell a few times, but it was more just the fear of the exposure and the consequence from a lot of the skiing we were doing. I found it really hard, but I had to kind of overcome that to move forward.
Before the Centennial Hut, there was the whooping of the snow that signified that avalanche was very potential. That's kind of what kicked it all off for me in terms of the mental challenges.
A little bit of a scare with a whoop.
Purchase for the huts.
Welcome to the Alpine edition of Cribs. I'm your host, Chris Brinlee Jr. Today I'm gonna give you a walkthrough of the Centennial Hut. Woo-hoo! All right, we've got the crampon vestibule right here. Check out this open floor plan. We got Ryan right here staking it out. Look at that. That's about a $50 billion view. Family style, eat their freeze-dried meals. Then right here we've got the sleeping area. 6 bunks down on the bottom and 6 bunks up top. Lots of room for all the nasty climbers. Let me tell you people, it does not get better than Centennial Hut on the Franz Joseph Neve.
Oh man, that window is so warm.
Anyone else in the hut tonight?
Nope, just us.
How long are you guys up there for? How many days of weather would you like?
We're probably taking off tomorrow, but we're going to go down to Tasman, so kind of as much as you can would be appreciated.
Snow down to 800 metres for a time. Severe gale northerlies, changing lighter southwest. Freezing level this evening, 1,300 metres.
The next morning, with a good forecast and clear skies, we left Centennial Hut behind, making our way for Graham's Saddle, where we'd cross the main divide.
Approaching the call. About to reach the high point of the trip. Gonna drop down off the other side and see what we find.
Getting that view, knowing that it's all downhill from there, and then things intensified as we started headed down into the icefall.
The beta we got for the Graham Saddle crossing told us that it was just going to be kind of an easy ski down.
That was good.
When we got there, it was a completely different story.
Trying to find a good route, stay safe. Pretty gnarly terrain.
So on the other side of the main divide, it's an imposing descent. Coming up it, it's probably quite straightforward, but going down with very little information was complicated.
I don't know. It almost looks like we could ski across the icefall
And then straight onto that.
and then straight down.
I think the feeling in the group, at least for myself, Jacob, and Ryan, I guess, was that we get onto rock. And so we could see rock above us.
I'm not really seeing where to get up that.
It seemed to be that there was a shoulder of rock that if we gained, we might be able to drop off and follow the rock down on the other side. So it was a gamble. This ended up being like a mistake.
I stopped in an area where I didn't want to continue on my skis. I didn't really assess the slope at first. I kind of looked around and it didn't look like it was any kind of crevasse terrain. Put on my crampons and started moving up the slope. I was walking on the snow, and then my right foot plugged through the snow, and then suddenly all the snow that was taking my weight just fell beneath me, and I realised straight away I was just falling into a crevasse.
The half of my body was up here, but I was trying to get traction with my back foot and it would just break through snow. So it was definitely wider than I was. It was like this. Tiger country.
So I yelled out to Jake above me, who had the rope, to throw me the line. I tied him with my teeth and then managed to grab an axe that was sitting on the back of my pack, scraped away at the snow on the edge and put that axe in and then climbed up out of it.
Is he pretty shaken up?
Yeah. Understandably.
After that moment, we reconvened with Chris. Chris was kind of the mastermind behind this trip, and I'd really spent no time with Chris before getting off the plane. My knowledge of Chris has been following his career, and he's got a very steep trajectory. So there was definitely an apprehension about you know, riding that rocket when myself, Ryan, and Jacob vetoed Chris's plan to descend the glacier and head up onto the rock. And we ended up expending a lot of energy to get to a point that ended up being a dead end. But Chris was just like, well, the benefit is that we know where we need to go now. Chris has ambition, but it's not at the expense of people.
This feels a lot more right.
Yeah, this feels a lot more right. That's exactly right.
I see.
As light faded and we switched over to headlamps, we kept booting steps down, eventually getting to a point that there was enough snow and the angle was easy enough that we were going to switch back over to skis. I actually had a pretty enjoyable ski down. I started talking about the idea of like, let's stop and maybe make camp for the night. Chris luckily found like just a big rock with a windsurf around it that looked like it would give us some shelter. There was hopes at that point that we were going to get out the next day.
What happened is we skied down the glacier in the dark, and as far as I know, we should be pretty smooth sailing from here on out. There's a lot to be happy about. I think either way, it should be a good day.
What you got going on over here, Ryan? Chris? Trying to get a brew going.
Get a brew going.
Maine.
I got him.
Yesterday we descended from that pass behind me, Graham Saddle, all the way down here through the ice wall, skied down at night onto our little bivvy.
We'd done a bunch of enjoyable skiing. We were going to get a bunch of enjoyable skiing the next morning, and then we'd have a few hours of walking on rocks on the Moraine, and then we'd be out.
The easy sliding's coming to an end sooner than I wished.
Now the junk show begins. We've got our skis, paddles, PFDs, everything strapped onto the outside. Now we've got to hike up over this moraine carrying probably close to 70 pounds and packs designed to carry 50.
It was only maybe 10, 11 kilometers over 10, 11 hours, which isn't any big deal. You're not really gaining a lot of elevation. You're not really losing a lot of elevation, but the experience of it was religious. Your mind is breaking through to another level of suffering.
The path becomes more convoluted with almost every meter gained.
You're losing parts of yourself to the process and pain. So once we got onto the moraine, it's mostly made up of these baby head rocks, they're called. They don't settle. They don't slot together. They always wobble. That really any bit of slippage, you're going to roll an ankle or you're going to fall over or you're going to hurt something. So you're looking and making plans of every step you take. It's the mental fatigue of looking at every step and planning your next 10 steps. It was soul crushing, and it's just endless. Every time you crest a ridge, you look at the lake and it's no closer because you're moving so slow. That day broke me.
If I could describe today in 3 words, it would be slow, tedious, and precarious. It's just really potentially hazardous terrain, and we've been in it for over 6 hours, and we're not done yet.
In the tent.
Oh yeah, baby.
How was it to camp on this tent?
So nice.
Better this morning than yesterday morning, that's for sure.
We've still got quite a bit of ways to go before we hit the water and are able to transition to pack rafts.
By the time we got close and we could see the end in sight, it felt like everyone was just manic.
Well, after the Moraine, you get to the toe of the glacier, which was calving the ice face into a Tasman lake.
At that point, I felt like the decision-making ability of the group was at a low because everyone just wanted to be done.
I hope that we can get off of this glacier. That was always sitting in the back of my mind. And there weren't a whole lot of options other than to go forward at that point. There's big shit up there. And
yeah, you're good, Leigh.
To get from where I am to where my friends are below, I'm going to have to cross through a literal war zone. The glacier's just spitting rocks out like bombs.
So stupid.
We were joking that it feels like this is what people at war go through, because you're literally hearing just pings of like rocks bouncing off the ice around you, and you're just like running. You've got a 70-pound pack on your back running on kind of loose stones, trying to move fast down this gully. So we took a bit of time to pick our pack rafts out. Felt like this was the crescendo of the trip, the point that we were looking forward to enjoy, which is getting into our pack raft, just sitting down and then just floating across this lake.
Very large amount of relief. As long as the boat went, I knew I would end up at the other end of the lake. So feeling good and safe.
So we just kind of put our feet out the side of our pack rafts and then just floated in a little like pontoon together. We're all just kind of, around each other.
And then we had a tour guide on a tour boat drive up to us once we were far enough away from the glacial face.
And he's like, I'm, obliged to let you guys know that you're extremely close to the glacier right now. And we all started laughing, thinking he was cracking a joke, and he immediately responded, no, I'm serious, guys.
And I'm like, you have no idea where we came from.
The glacier could calve at any moment. The risk of that seemed lesser than running down the gully. It felt like juxtaposed, this was not an immediate risk that we needed to, avoid.
That was probably one of the highlights of the trip, just responding like it, because I felt super happy at that point to be floating away from it all. And he's like, oh, you're crazy to be in there.
And that was just an interesting juxtaposition, because it had been our reality for a few days. And so it was our first time seeing someone that was outside of the experience we'd been having and just seeing his perspective. He viewed what we were doing as dangerous, but we viewed it as this was the safest part of our trip. So Ryan and Chris joined up with us, and we started talking. Ryan at this point was talking about a beer at Mount Cook Village sounded like a good idea, and how could we convince Chris that it would be a great idea to take out and go to Mount Cook Village. Chris said he wanted to at least float a bit of the river, and we were like, okay, we've inflated our rafts, we've only been in them for like an hour or two, let's just go down the river a bit. But immediately we were hitting whitewater, and I'm just shouting across to Jacob, we're not in the braided flats. And I just remember seeing Chris go off a little drop immediately. I'm like, okay, we're in the shit now. Mountain trips, teach you a few different things, physical, mental, emotional, about yourself, and it expands those perspectives.
As a mountain man, we like to romanticize danger in a way, and we like to forget the worst parts and always think of it as in the best light.
You know, and I think that's the part that you get to walk across a mountain range, something that might be an hour or less in a helicopter. When you have to walk most of it on foot, carrying the equipment you need to deal with this terrain, physically it tries you, physically it teaches you a lot about your body. Mentally, it teaches you about holds in your abilities, holds in your skills. And then emotionally, I think this is a part that, you know, doesn't get talked about a lot, is that you're dealing with fear a lot.
From this experience, what I learned about myself was the ability I have to keep my head level when shit hits the fan.
I am definitely not prepared to give it all for the mountains. My family is more important to me than anything else, hands down, period. Whatever adventure I do in the future, I want to make sure and I am not putting that element of my life at risk.
Fear can make you irrational. Fear can make you think of things as way worse than they actually are. And being honest, I don't think I'd been in an alpine environment where I was experiencing doubt in a long time. When you're in it, it's difficult to describe that your mind is dealing with emotions and it's affecting your ability to look at something maybe more logically.
It doesn't mean that I'm going to never go back to the mountains. There's just something in you that needs that mountains, that needs that adventure, that you need your family, and I've been trying to find that line of where I can satisfy both with obviously giving the priority to my family, but I do still need mountains in some way.
I don't think our lives were ever at risk, but it's in the back of your mind. You're maybe a few steps away from a situation where your life is at risk. So you're dealing with that. You're dealing with those thoughts that you're getting close to something. You're getting close to an edge. In a lot of ways, there is an expansion of those perspectives from a technical ability, from an emotional sense, and then just physically walking across the expanse of the Southern Alps.
I suppose it just gives me a bigger picture idea on life and what really matters out there. And
you're just dealing with a variety of mountain terrain and just getting a full perspective of what mountains actually are.
By no way am I promoting doing any of this.
Just watching the rocks like go overhead, where like Jacob's leg is just like shaking from the adrenaline. And he's like, "Hey guys," he's like, "I can't share this." I can't share this. He's like, "How am I going to record this?"
I just ran through a war zone. Rocks, like that's what I was thinking. I'm like,
This is like
you read trip reports sometimes. You're like, God, that's so stupid. What were they doing? You know, when you've been doing stupid for 72 hours, stupid doesn't seem so like a few seconds of stupid
like
or 72 hours.
That seemed totally
Whatever.
reasonable.